To say that Renae was smitten would be putting it mildly. Braden Spiteri was everything she never knew she wanted in a partner. For one, he was gorgeous, but he was also attentive and kind-hearted. He always knew what to say to make her feel better. But it wasn't all kittens and rainbows. The past 18 months or so had really put their relationship to the test. You see, Renae and Braden hadn't actually met in person yet. A couple of years ago, Braden and his friend Richie were riding on his motorcycle when they wrecked. Tragically, Richie didn't make it. And because Braden had been the one driving, he was convicted of vehicular manslaughter and had to serve a short sentence in prison. In order to get a shorter sentence, though, Braden forfeited any visitation rights. And thankfully, he had been able to negotiate having a mobile phone. He couldn't make phone calls, but he could still text. And it was through these texts that their relationship grew. Braden was scheduled to be released soon, and Renae had already made an appointment to meet with a wedding photographer, and she was picking out a dress. Before long, they were going to be married, and they'd be able to start their brand new life together. Only there was one small problem. Braden Spiteri did not exist. In order to understand Renae and Braden's unconventional relationship, we need to rewind a little bit. Renae Marsden was born on October 15, 1992, in New South Wales, Australia. When she was about 2, her mom and dad separated. A few years later, her mom, Teresa, met Mark Marsden. They married in the year 2000 and went on to have 3 more kids, Luke, Jake, and Monique. And when Renae turned 18, she decided that she wanted to have the last name Marsden as well. One of the first relationships Renae had was while attending Mount St. Benedict. It was 2007 and she was in the 9th grade. Her best friend, a fellow student named Camilla, made it abundantly clear that she did not approve of that relationship. Renae's cousin Stephanie, who also attended the school, said that by this time, Renae started skipping school with Camilla. Renae would often confide in her cousin that Camilla was pushing her around and hitting her and causing bruises. And her once outgoing personality flipped, and now she was quiet and withdrawn. The next year, throughout their 10th grade, Renae and Camilla would be nearly in constant contact. In the middle of that school year, Renae told Stephanie that Camilla tried to kiss her a few times and that sometimes she could be violent, but then she would turn around and be really nice and buy gifts for Renae. This scared Stephanie. It scared her so much that she broke her cousin's confidence by telling Renae's mom, Teresa, what was going on. Renae's parents decided that her declining grades and her bad attitude were largely due to Camilla's influence. But regardless of what her parents wanted, they continued to hang out because Teresa would tell Renae that she's not going to pay the phone bill so that she couldn't have a phone, so that she couldn't contact Camilla. But Camilla would sabotage Teresa by getting Renae a secret phone to use. Friends and relatives of Renae are not shy when talking about how possessive and controlling Camilla could be. She didn't even want Renae to spend time with her cousins. From all I read, it seems that Renae would attempt to distance herself from Camilla, and she would be successful at it for a time. But Camilla had this way of just wriggling her way back into Renae's life. In 2009, Renae starts training to be a hairstylist. This meant splitting her time between Mount St. Benedict's and a salon called Miss Elizabeth's Hair Studio. This threw Camilla into a panic because without Renae at school all day, how would she know if she was in danger of losing Renae completely to another friend, even worse, a boyfriend? On the other hand, Renae was thankful to have some time away from St. Benedict's, but that would all change when halfway through the year, Camilla also applied to train at the salon. Renae told Stephanie that a couple months later, Camilla chased her down the hall and pulled her hair. She was afraid that Camilla was going to continue to lash out at her even more. One day, a young man named Angus comes into the salon, and his heart skipped a beat or probably 2, when the pretty girl he noticed while walking in motions for him to join her at the shampoo station. Renae introduces herself and asks Angus to have a seat. He thought for sure she'd be able to see his heart beating through his shirt, but he could have sat in that chair forever. While he was getting his hair cut, he couldn't keep his eyes from wandering back to the pretty girl that shampooed his hair. In the subsequent weeks, Angus found himself needing a lot of haircuts. By April of 2010, Angus and Renae were inseparable, and by all accounts, blissfully happy. They had already decided they were going to have 4 kids and a Labrador. But behind the scenes, somebody was driving an invisible wedge between them. Camilla kept whispering in Renae's ear like a devil on her shoulder, making little comments about Angus. She would constantly call or text Renae. She'd wait outside her house, or she'd turn up uninvited, saying she needed to speak to Renae. And while Renae didn't make a complaint to the police or the salon, she ultimately removed herself from the situation, and she ended her training at the hair salon. In Facebook messages between August and October of 2011, Camilla adopted the role of jilted girlfriend. She complained to Renae that it was Angus who ruined their friendship. But Renae told her that there would always be another person in her life, whether it was Angus or somebody else. The day Renae broke off their relationship, Angus was totally blindsided, like the floor had dropped out from under his feet. Did he do something wrong? Say something wrong? Maybe it was something he didn't do or should have done. He never got an answer. Renae was just gone. By the end of November, Camilla started a back-and-forth communication on Renae's Facebook page between herself and her ex-boyfriend, a boy named Braden Spiteri. The purpose of this back-and-forth was to assure Renae that Camilla didn't have a problem if Renae ever wanted to date her ex-boyfriend. And Braden made it clear that he didn't have an issue with Camilla being Renae's best friend. You can read these messages in the coroner's inquest linked below. I can only give you the cliff notes here because there's a lot. So believe me when I say that there is a lot more story to tell. When Renae told her mom that she had met somebody, Teresa said, are you sure? You just broke up with Angus. It just seems a little quick. But Renae told her mom, it's okay. Camilla introduced me. She used to date him. And Renae showed her a picture of Braden and Camilla, taken a couple years earlier. Teresa and Mark were, let's say, less than thrilled when they learned that Renae's new boyfriend was doing a stint in prison. But they were also afraid of risking Renae being pushed away. So they did their best to keep the peace, at least for now. This became more and more difficult, though, because Braden would occasionally intercept Facebook messages meant for Renae. Teresa wasn't having it. She told Braden that if she wanted to talk to him, she'd message him directly. So, kindly butt out, dude. Another time, Teresa had commented on one of Angus's posts, and Braden proceeded to message her and berate her. He said, "What kind of mother likes a post from an old boyfriend?" Teresa did not like Braden. She thought he was rude and not the best for her daughter. But she held on to a hope that maybe she could persuade Renae to change her mind about Braden before he was released from prison. To say that Renae and Braden's relationship was a roller coaster would be an understatement, because he was constantly jealous. And then he would turn around and shower Renae with, I love you, and would keep reeling her back in with stories of his mom who's dying from a brain tumor. And he'd tell her when he'd get beat up at prison, and she'd always feel sorry for him. One day, Teresa reached out to Braden, and she said to him, if you were half a man, you would leave Renae alone while you're in jail. Braden surprised her by agreeing, and he messaged Renae, and they agreed to put their relationship on the back burner until he got out. During this time, Renae started seeing a coworker named Ian. and it developed into a very serious relationship. But she was still talking to Braden. It's like she couldn't totally let go of him. And Braden made it abundantly clear that he did not like Renae dating somebody else, and he would send threatening messages to Ian. Obviously, this love triangle was not fair to anybody. Choices had to be made, and Renae would choose Braden. 17 months seemed to fly by, and in July of 2013, Renae's friend, Camilla, went on a month-long holiday to the States, and she wouldn't be able to text Renae. Coincidentally, Braden would be going through a series of parole hearings and would also not be in contact. But he hoped that when it was all over, he'd have a release date and he'd be able to surprise Renae. During this break, Renae was seriously reflecting on her relationships. Even though Braden couldn't respond, Renae continued to message him. She would say that he is her rock. She couldn't live without him. She also told him that she decided as soon as Camilla came back from the States that she was going to end their friendship for good. She had come to the conclusion that this volatile relationship with Camilla wasn't good for either of them. On August 5th of 2013, Renae's world crumbled around her. She was walking into a cafe. She was going to grab something to eat on her lunch break when Braden sends her a text and it says, "I think I need a break, and so do you." Now, we'll never know what was in the other 90 plus texts they exchanged that day, but Renae is so upset that she leaves work early to go home. She would call the prison, but she's not able to get through and speak to Braden. And by the time she gets home, Teresa knows her daughter is really, really upset. But Renae just keeps telling her, "It's fine, Mom. It's fine. Nothing's wrong." Then Teresa gets a message from Braden that says, "Sort your daughter out. She's threatening to kill herself." Teresa goes straight up to Renae's room and asks her to explain what is going on. Renae tells her mom, "Listen, I wouldn't do anything that stupid. Don't worry. I've got this under control." Renae is getting changed out of her work clothes into some casual clothes, and she is freshening her makeup because she says she's going to meet some friends for dinner, but she'd be home in a few hours. And then Teresa's like, "Well, okay, if she feels good enough to go out, everything must be okay." But Renae wouldn't be meeting with friends. CCTV footage would capture Renae near the Gap at Watson's Bay about 5:20 p.m. Renae and Braden exchange some more texts. Then Renae sends her mom one final message. A few minutes before 6 p.m., video footage shows her throwing an object over the cliff into the ocean, which was probably her phone. After that, Renae is seen climbing over the edge of the cliff face, and she disappears from the camera's view. Despite exhaustive searches, her body has never been recovered. When Renae doesn't return home and isn't answering her phone, Teresa calls the police, and then she starts calling Renae's friends to see if anybody has seen her. Camilla offers to pick up Teresa so that maybe they can go look for Renae together. Meanwhile, the authorities find out from the cell company that Renae's phone was switched off at 5:58 in the vicinity of the Gap. By 8:45 that night, police locate Renae's car. It's parked on Military Road, about 150 meters from the cliff overlooking the ocean. Nobody wants to say it, but everybody realizes what's going on. A couple days later, Teresa wants to speak to Braden. What is going on? What happened? She messages him, but he never responds to her. Camilla would tell Teresa not to blame Braden, that she had spoken to him and he was very, very upset. The police investigation switches from locating Renae to focusing on her relationship with Braden. Even though Renae threw her phone into the ocean, her old phone that she had recently replaced was found in her car. And through a very strange series of events, a 13-year-old friend of Renae's little brother manages to download dates times, and phone numbers of the texts sent and received on that old phone. After Renae's dad plots all this info on a spreadsheet, it becomes all too clear what was really going on. Whenever Braden would text Renae, Camilla would stop. And when Camilla was texting, Braden would stop. Renae's parents and the police realize that Camilla is Braden. Braden is Camilla. But why? In 2020, Camilla was compelled to answer questions before a coroner's inquest. She admitted to fabricating Braden Spiteri. But she insisted that Renae knew all along and asked Camilla to continue texting her as Braden. Of course, the coroner did not believe Camilla, but it's impossible to prove one way or the other. Unfortunately, at the time in 2013, the prepaid cell phone provider only kept messages for 7 days before purging them from the system. By the time it was discovered that Camilla might be involved, she had already gotten rid of the phone and its SIM card that she used to communicate as Braden. And she had also deleted the messages that she and Renae had exchanged that day in her phones. Yeah, I said phones with an S. So unless Camilla decides to be honest about what really happened, there is no way to know for sure what it was that made Renae so distraught that she took her own life. The coroner is of the opinion that Renae believed Brandon was real till the moment she jumped off the ledge. But regardless if she discovered the truth or was just completely heartbroken when Braden ended the relationship she believed was genuine, it makes me physically sick to imagine how devastated Renae must have been. It's going to make you mad, but Camilla was never charged with a crime. For 2 main reasons. 1, there's no way to specifically prove that Renae didn't know that Braden and Camilla were the same person, even though there's little doubt that she had no idea. Why would Renae confide in Braden that she was ending a friendship with Camilla if she thought they were the same person? I mean, it's ridiculous. The second reason is because for catfishing to be considered a crime, the perpetrator must be trying to get financial gain from the victim. But the Marsdens are fighting for the law to be expanded so that anyone who fabricates an identity for the purpose of any sort of manipulation or coercive control, they can be prosecuted. Nevertheless, the inquest spelled out exactly why it is believed Camilla deceived Renae and pretended to be Braden. The evidence demonstrates that Camilla's motive was to have Renae all to herself. Renae had established that she preferred having a male partner, but Camilla could not tolerate Renae being in any intimate relationship that did not include her. She would sabotage any connections that Renae would make. By masquerading as Braden, Camilla could have control over Renae. She could use this persona to have an intimate relationship with Renae. It's painfully obvious that the love Camilla thought she had for Renae had turned into a twisted obsession and a need for complete control. And if that meant destroying Renae, so be it. At some point, it was doomed to blow up in her face. I mean, did she think that Renae was going to wait forever for Braden to be released from prison? In my opinion, Camilla only cared about herself. In the end, it was Renae and her family who paid the ultimate price. The level of selfishness that this would take is truly staggering. And I know, I can hear voices out there. They're thinking, wait a minute, how did she not know that Camilla and Braden were the same person? And you know, when you are afforded hindsight, red flags look more like scarlet banners waving above a black and white landscape. I read comments. People said that Renae shouldn't have been so naive, but at least the Marsdens got answers and got some closure. And to them, I would say, look who's being naive now. Closure is only for those who have no skin in the game. Their curiosities are satisfied like a package wrapped up with a neat little bow. But for the friends and families involved, there is no such thing as closure. There's only an empty space where their loved one used to be. And that is the story of Renae Marsden. I'm curious to hear what you think down below. Thank you all for joining me today. I really do appreciate it. And I will see you all really, really soon in the next video. Bye, guys.